Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our small footprint. So I normally do a whole lot of videos where I do all the food prep and I share all the food prep that I do for the couple of weeks after my groceries and things like that. But I came home with COVID, the most recent grocery trip, and it has really thrown a lot of our preparation, a lot of our planning. We didn't eat the same because we had COVID and I didn't have the energy for, I was sick for a week and then I couldn't do anything for a week, and everything has been a bit skewed. So I do have some food prep for you today, but I am still feeling a little out of sorts with the whole routine of it and the process. So you'll have to bear with me because it just doesn't feel quite as natural as I normally would do it, because it's really delayed for a start. Like a lot of the stuff that we got that had to be processed, I just had to deal with. I had to throw in the freezer or something. Like there was a lot of stuff that didn't get wasted as such, but wasn't used to the potential that I would normally choose to use it. So it is early morning, I don't know, 7 o'clock or something. It was raining all day yesterday. I look awfully tired looking at myself on the screen, but I have got plenty of sleep, so I don't know why that is. But I have a video today to share with you with some of the food prep that we did the other day and some bits and pieces. So I think what I'm going to do is just sort of find the footage from days, because I did take footage even though I didn't feel very well and things were a bit strange. I just turned the camera on and just didn't do anything with it, so I'm still collating it all. So as I collate it, I'll share it, and it might be a little bit out of sync, so we'll see how we go with it all. But plenty of stuff to share regardless, and hopefully by the next trip, which is 2 weeks away. So I'm starting to plan the next trip now, what we need to get, because Christmas is not that far away, 90 something days away. I have to plan my trips a little bit differently for the end of the year because I don't want to be down there during school holidays. So it's going to be a 6-week gap for this one, and then a 5-week gap and a 5-week gap, which is going to affect my shopping a little bit because of pay cycles, but also because Christmas shopping always has a few extras. We always do a couple of little bonus things at Christmas time. We tend to buy a box of frozen green prawns that we use over Christmas, and bits and pieces of baking and stuff. So I'll probably do Vlogmas this year again too, so we'll need some baking stuff for all that sort of thing too. So but anyway, we will get to that in the next couple of weeks and get to the solid planning, and I'll share that with you. I've still got plenty of garden stuff to share with you as well, but today is a food prep video, getting some stuff sorted for us it was for a week or so. It was some sourdough bagels, some sourdough granola, what else did we do? Some caramel coffee syrup, things like that. So I will let you have a look at that, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks guys for watching. So we started out making sourdough bagels. Now, I make these quite regularly, but they are a little bit of work of a morning because you boil them before you bake them. So I haven't made them as often lately just because I haven't known what sort of time I had. But because we hadn't had them for a while, we really wanted them. This is an overnight bagel dough recipe from Clever Carrot, or Emily Raffa. She does have a version in her book, the Simple Artisan Sourdough, but she also has a free version on her website, the Clever Carrot. So this dough was made the night before and left to rise all night, and then I deal with it in the morning. So the first thing I've got to do is divide it into 100-ish gram balls, and then each of those balls needs to be rolled into an actual ball. So I just divide it first, and then I want to roll each ball into the tight ball. Normal technique, use your hands or the board to get a nice tight skin on the ball, bunched all in the middle so that it's as neat and firm as you can get it without... You don't want to deflate the dough overly much either though, so you want to be gentle but firm with it. It's one of those things that you learn as the more sourdough you do. Once the balls are once you've made them into those little tight balls, what you need to do is you make your hole in them. So there is a few different ways of doing this, but my preference is to place my thumb straight in the middle. If you put a little bit of flour on top, it'll help to stop your thumb from sticking as you break the surface of the dough. And I put my thumb in down to the board and give it sort of a round motion to break the skin on the other side as well. And then I use my hands with the thumbs or fingers inside that hole to gently stretch it around my hands to create that hole. We like a fairly decent sized hole in ours. Some people just like a sort of a divot, but we make a fairly significant hole in ours. So once you get the shape right, you just put them aside on a tray. They will fluff up a little bit, but not very much once you've done that. Once I have them all shaped, then I start with the ones that I shaped first, because they've been sitting there the longest, and they go into boiling water with a little bit of honey in it. Now, you don't want to overcrowd the pan because you don't want the temperature to drop too much. You want the water at a simmer. You place them into the water, and after not very long, probably 20 seconds, they float to the surface. So there's different ways, different amounts of time that you can choose to put to boil your bagels. The longer you boil them, the tougher the crust is going to be, the chewier the crust is going to be. So as little as 30 seconds aside, all the way up to 90 seconds aside, I've seen, depending on who's making them and their preferences. So once you choose your time, do say 30 seconds on one side, you flip them, do 30 seconds on the other side, and then you remove them and place them on your baking tray, and then repeat the process until you've done all of them. So you've got all of them boiled and placed on baking trays and ready to go. Now, I made up some everything but the bagel seasoning because I really enjoy that on my bagels, but I actually really enjoy it sprinkled over eggs and plenty of other things as well. I use around about a heaped half cup of garlic granules and around about a heaped half cup of onion flakes. I then use around about a cup of white sesame seeds and around about half a cup of black sesame seeds. Then 2 tablespoons of poppy seeds, and then some salt. Now, I used very little salt here, and I used fine salt because it was all I had. What you really want is you want to be using flaked salt or kosher salt, because the texture of the rest of the grains, the texture of the rest of the spices means that if you're using fine salt, the fine salt's just going to sift to the bottom and you're not going to get a nice even coverage. You want all the, in something like a seasoning that you're sticking onto something, you want all the pieces to be a similar size, otherwise you're not going to get evenly spread. So you need the flaked onions and the granules of garlic and the seeds and that to all be of a similar size so that they stick cohesively to your bagel. So you'd prefer a flaked salt or something here, and you don't have to use salt at all as well if you don't want to. So I poured that seasoning into a wide enough bowl that I could dip the bagels, and then I dip the bagels in. So what I tend to do is I use the side that's on the baking tray because that's still going to be damp. So I pick it up, use the side that's face down into the bagels, and then I flip them over to put them on the tray, and that little bit of dampness, it helps for all the seasoning to stick to them. And then repeat them with all. So you've got the whole lot of them done with the bagel seasoning. Depending on the size of your oven and stuff, of course, you could do these in batches if you wanted to, but you've got to be careful. If you let the dough sit too long before you boil it, then you've got issues and things like that. So this is a quadruple. No, I think this is only a double batch because I didn't have enough starter. I would normally make a quadruple batch, so I normally just power through it all and get it all done. Once you've got your seasoning on them, and you don't have to put seasoning on them at all, or you could put anything you want as a topping as well, just as a side note there. I just really like them with this. It goes into the oven to bake for about 20 to 25 minutes. If you don't have any seasoning on them, you can flip them for the last couple of minutes to try and even out the browning, but with the seasoning on it, I wouldn't suggest that because you're going to lose some seasoning, but also you risk the seasoning burning on the tray as well. While they were baking, I was trying to use my time appropriately. So while they were baking, and they're baking in my barbecue, so I don't walk too far away because the heat in the barbecue is inconsistent, I decided to make some caramel coffee syrup. So I have been making this on the stove before I upgraded my Thermomix and upgraded my solar, and whilst that's fine, it's a little hard to get a consistent result sometimes, and sometimes I found that it would crystallize quite badly and that because I just didn't maintain the temperature. So having the Thermomix makes things a hell of a lot simpler. So I just make my sugar syrup 1-to-1 sugar to water. Now this is caramelly because I used raw sugar. Brown sugar would do something similar. You can use white sugar and have a clear one. You can add essences to it. You can cook off the sugar a little bit to caramelize it before you make your syrups. I just wanted to go nice and simple. So I use 1-to-1 sugar. I use 250 grams of raw sugar and 250 grams of water. And then I use a little tiny bit of glucose syrup into that as well, because that helps with the crystallization that sometimes happens. The crystallization is where the sugar particles attach to something. So if your jar has a tiny little bit of dust in it or something, then the sugar can attach to it and crystallize, and in the jar you can just reheat it and it will dissolve again. But the glucose syrup does help avoid that a little bit. You can add vanilla beans, vanilla essence, vanilla, the caviar out of a vanilla bean. You can add any sort of essence you want with it, really. We just like it plain because we just have this with our cold brew coffee. So all it is that it's something that will dissolve nice and easily in a cold brew coffee, because we just make really simple coffee that we in mason jars with coconut cream during summer. So I cooked that for 5 minutes at 100 degrees and speed 2, and that seemed to be perfect. I poured it into some clean jars and I store it in the fridge. You can make it in bulk and process it if you need to, but we don't go through it very fast, so I don't tend to do that. So I just make these couple of little jars and they last us quite a while, because we only use it with the cold brew coffee in summer. So we just store these little jars in the fridge, and I make more when I need to. And now that I've got the Thermomix, it's a whole lot simpler too, rather than doing it on the stovetop. This is what the bagels looked like cooked. I was trying to slice one to show you, but they were very hot, but everyone was nagging at me for breakfast, so I kind of didn't have a whole lot of choice. But this is the inside of them. So they are a standard bagel, fairly dense on the inside, fairly chewy. They toast up really nicely the next day. We like them with all sorts of things on them. Open face with, bacon and eggs and stuff like that, or as a sandwich, BLTs, anything. They work. They're very versatile, so which is why we like to make them, and they work well for a couple of days. And also, if you don't use them after a few days, they grind up in the Thermomix into some really nice breadcrumbs for the top of mac and cheese with all those everything bagel seasoning in them as well. The other thing we got done was some sourdough granola. Now, my recipe for sourdough granola is very fluid. It's oats and nuts. I used peanuts and sliced slivered almonds, I think, in this one. I quite often use some sesame seeds, some chia seeds. We use some hemp seeds if I've got them. And I use sourdough starter as the binding agent. My kids really like clumpy granola, so they really like me to be able to cook it up into little clusters. That's how they prefer to eat it, and they regularly just eat it dry. They don't even eat it with anything. They eat it with yogurt, but most of the time they snack on it. So I will put a link to, I think I've got another video on this. I'll put a link to the other video in the comments that gives the ratios that I use, but realistically it's sort of fluid in what I have and what is there. We do sweeten it. I don't use honey because I don't like the way honey burns, so I use maple syrup and some raw sugar, generally speaking, the sourdough starter, and a bit of flour and water if I need to bump that up, which is basically just more starter. And then we mix it all in. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it on baking trays. Sonnet very much likes to help make the granola because she really likes to snack on it raw, which is just a little bit weird, but that's fine. So she always helps me make this. So she mixed it all together for me, and then we place it on baking trays. And you want it on the baking tray, but you want some little gaps where you've got it. So because you want to lay it fairly thick because you want those clusters, but you also need some little holes in the tray to make sure that the heat is permeating all the way around and it's not just burning the edges. Rotating the trays is always a good idea too. You want to cook it on a fairly low temperature. Again, I'm cooking in a barbecue, so it's something that has to be watched, rotated and assessed as I go along. But if it's cooking unevenly, you can pull the trays out and just mix it around a little bit. By mixing it around, you're breaking up your clusters a little bit, but that's, what you have to do. So you can gently mix it around the tray just if the edges are browning too quickly, and put it back if you need to cook the middle of it. Nothing in there is raw as such. It is sourdough starter, but it's heat kills it. Like, so even if things are a little soft, it still lasts quite well for us. We don't have a problem with that. They just prefer it to be those crunchy clusters, so that's where I try and get it to go. So when the trays are cooked, because I need the trays, because I need to keep on rotating the trays in and out of the barbecue, I place it all in a nice wide bowl to cool down, because you don't want to put it in a sealed container until it's cold, because otherwise it's going to go soggy, or you'll have mold issues and things like that. So I just put it in a really large bowl and I stir it around in that bowl to make sure that it's all cooling evenly, and I make sure that it's well and truly cold before I put it in any kind of a sealed container. The other thing that we got done too was we put some eggs in the incubator. So we have a Janoel 24 egg incubator. This is actually a new one that we had to order because the old one got dropped, unfortunately. But so the way this works is you put 350 mils of water into the reservoir in the bottom to begin with, and then every second day you add 150 mils of water via a little hole in the front. It can hold 24 eggs, so we put 24 eggs in there because you're not guaranteed that all of them are going to hatch. So we will check them, we'll candle them at 7 days and see which ones appear to be working and discard any that look like they are inert. It takes about 21 days. This is the perfect time of the year for us to do it because it is not as cold. By the time they hatch, they'll still have to go under heat, obviously, but it's not going to be cold enough that they'll have to be inside. So I hate having a brooding box inside the house. So we want to be able to have it outside the house with heating as well. Obviously, we have heating plates, but it'll be warm enough by then that they will be able to have the brooding box outside rather than inside the house. But the other problem that we run into when we're incubating eggs is that if it's too late in the year, the incubator overheats because the ambient temperature is too high during the day, and you have to crack the incubator to allow it to cool down, and then that screws with the humidity, and then you have problems with hatching. So this is the perfect time of the year for us to do it. So we're going to do it, and then hopefully the ratio of hens to roosters isn't too high and we don't have to cull too many roosters, but when it comes to it, that's what we'll have to do, and they will be for eating purposes. So we just need to increase the herd size. We've got all the rescue chickens, which is great, the 20 odd rescue chickens, but our old girls are not laying a huge amount and starting to get quite old. We have a few die for random reasons. So we incubating mostly those eggs so that we can replace our flock that we've had for the last 4 years. And we love the range of chickens. So we got blue eggs, green eggs, cream eggs, brown eggs, all sorts of coloured eggs with hopefully all sorts of rainbow chickens, because Rainbow and Fox are our rainbow roosters. So that will be really fun for the kids too. I will get my time-lapse camera out too, so when they are hatching I'll put the time-lapse camera on them as well so that you can all see them happen. So thank you very much for joining me again today, and I'm sorry that this month has been so hit and miss, but we will get there, and hopefully next month will be a little bit better or a little bit more consistent to what I would normally have as my content. But at the same time, we're coming into summer and garden overtakes the kitchen a lot too, so the content might change a little bit there. And then we've got Christmas, so we'll probably do Vlogmas as well though again this year, because I do craft activities with the kids each day and things like that. So anyway, I will see you again on the next video, and thank you very much. Bye guys.